Hello everybody again. Hello, welcome to this talk. And I've entitled this talk The Cryptic Meanings of the Rosicrucian Tailpieces and Other Such Emblems. And it's the last of the series of talks on Rosicrucian cryptography that I'm giving this year, 2024, to celebrate the quatercentenary of the publication in 1624 of Duke Augustus's great cipher manual, Cryptomenytices and Cryptographiae, which means in English, because it's a Latin title, means in English Cryptomenytics and Cryptography. The word cryptomenytics covers absolutely everything, really. But it's a word hardly used by English people. Now, as before, I'll continue with focusing on the hidden meaning of the cryptographic pictures and their associated ciphers, but dealing this time with the deeply symbolic tailpieces, or endpieces as they're also called, and the highly revealing end page of Cryptomenytices. And such tailpieces or endpieces are named as such because they end a section of writing. Of course. Now, in my previous talk, I mainly focused on the one and only headpiece in Cryptomenytices and the various types of headpieces in the Shakespeare and Bacon works, with the Shakespeare headpieces revealing who the true Shakespeare authors are and how they relate to each other in a special way. And it's a way that imitates the basic truth of life, of all life, throughout the universe. It's very important to take this on board because it was done on purpose. I also showed how Cryptomenytices is based on the Hebrew Christian Kabbalah and its key teaching of the tree of life, and how the manual reveals this. Now, in this talk, focusing on the tailpieces or endpieces in Cryptomenytices and the last or end page of the cipher manual, I will give further information about those things and also about the Rosicrucian fraternity of that time. Now, from now on, I'm going to share my screen. Now, in summary of what I explained in my previous talk on headpieces, there are 10 pages in Cryptomenytices and Cryptographiae that contain the one and only pictorial headpiece in the manual, which is a bride Gemini eagle headpiece. And these 10 headpiece pages reference the 10 Sephiroth, or emanations, of the Kabbalistic tree of life, which are numbered 1 to 10. And 3 of these 10 pages show the headpiece either a third or halfway down the page and ending a section of writing, rather than heading a page and section of text as per normal, and as the other 7 pages do. Now, these 3 unusual headpiece pages refer to the 3 symbolically feminine Sephiroth, numbers 3, 7, and 9 of the Tree of Life, as normally represented. And of these 3, the first 2 of them, number 3 and number 7, contain a pictorial tailpiece which is printed immediately below the out-of-place headpiece. And the third page of these 3, which is number 9, also contains a tailpiece, but one that consists of 6 lines of fluorons arranged to form an inverted triangle. Now, Duke Augustus's Cryptomenytices and Cryptographiae contains several types of tailpieces, which I shall show now. And 3 of these are pictorial, and the rest are lines of small pieces of decorative type known as fluorons or flowers, which are typesets so as to form either triangles or rectangles. And both types of tailpiece, pictorial and fluoron, convey secret messages. The former via the symbolism of its pictures and number of appearances, the latter by its numerical and geometrical cipher. Three pictorial tailpieces consists of 1. A pan tailpiece, which appears once at the end of the 4-page dedication to Ferdinand II, the Holy Roman Emperor. And then 2. A pan and bride tailpiece, which appears 40 times. And then a flower tailpiece, which appears 19 times. So that's the pan tailpiece I'm pointing to now. That's the pan and bride tailpiece. And this is the flowery one. Now the pictorial tailpiece I'm showing now is the one that depicts Pan and his bride, but I've coloured it in to make it clearer to see what is what, which I hope helps you. Now Pan, the spirit of nature or spirit of the universe, is portrayed as the green man. I'm pointing to him there. And his bride, who is known in classical myth as Echo, is the soul of nature or soul of the universe. I'm pointing to her now. And the tailpiece appears 40 times in the Cryptomenytices folio. And 40, you know why 40? Well, 40 is a special number that is symbolic of initiation and transformation, of a challenging testing time that leads to a rebirth or resurrection that is more advanced and better than before. It also refers to a sequence of 9 40-day periods or stages that lead to the mystical marriage of soul and spirit, culminating with the birth of light. And 40 is also the number of companions in a complete chapter of Rosicrucians, or Holy Royal Arch Freemasons, as I explained in my previous talk on Rosicrucian cryptography and the tomb of Christian Rosicrucian. Now, in 2 of these 40 appearances, the tailpiece appears in conjunction with the bride Gemini Eagle headpiece, wherein both headpiece and tailpiece together end the section or the section of text. And these 2 appearances occur on the first appearance of the tailpiece, which is the 3rd page of the 10-page headpiece series, and on the 37th appearance of the tailpiece, which is the 7th page of the 10-page headpiece series. I'm going through this carefully because one has to count the number of pages and appearances and so on, because it's all part of the cipher system. Now, besides the cipher 3, which refers to Sephira number 3, the Holy Intelligence, and 7, which refers to Sephira number 7, meaning good desires or goodwill, symbolized by Venus, 37 is another special number. And 37 refers to one of the angles of the right-angled triangle with sides in the proportion of 3 to 4 to 5, which is known as Euclid's 47th proposition. In Freemasonry, this triangle is referred to as the gallows square, the square that tests whether the master square is truly square. In esoteric terms, side 3 refers to the Divine Father, side 4 to the Divine Mother, and side 5 to the Divine Son, which is the light or delight that is born as a result of the father and mother uniting together in love. The 37-degree angle signifies the mother and child connection, wherein the mother gives birth to the child of light. And the famous classical myth concerning this is about Venus, who gives birth to Cupid and Harmony. Now, the frame in this tailpiece consists of two frames which interlock with each other, demonstrating the dual nature of the divine being, which can be summed up in this instance as wisdom to design, strength to support. Wisdom to design, strength to support. And the frame associated with wisdom displays a rectangle with projections on each side and above and below. Now the projections identify a cross whose central part is hidden by the fruits and the foliage. And the rectangle has dimensions in the ratio of 3 to 4, referred to as an oblong square in Freemasonry. And this 3 to 4 oblong square provides two gallows squares within it if a diagonal is drawn, as I've shown here. Or 4 if two gallows squares made by the other diagonal is also included. Now the frame associated with strength enfolds, interlocks with, and supports the wisdom frame. And in this way, the idea of the divine wisdom and intelligence is symbolized. The wisdom that designs and the strength that supports. And usually these two are symbolized as the twin great pillars, Jachin and Boaz, of Solomon's temple. But here they're shown as two frames supporting the forms and growth of nature. Now, upon the rectangular frame and emerging from it are two heads. The head on the upper part of this frame is that of Pan, the green man, who's the creative spirit of the universe. And the head on the lower part of this frame is that of Echo, Pan's bride, who's the soul of the universe. The spirit is the sound, the word that creates the universe. And the soul is the mind that gives form to this sound, like an echo or geometric figure, so that it can be heard, seen, understood, and known. Then in addition, this frame also displays 8 jewels, 7 small round jewels, and 1 large square-based pyramidal jewel. And 3 of the small round jewels are on the right-hand side, 3 are on the left, and 1 at the top as the crown jewel. And these 7 jewels cryptically suggest the 7 jewels of wisdom. In Christian terms, the 7 jewels are the 7 jewels of faith, which are virtue, understanding, moderation, patience, goodness, kindness, and charity, as recounted in the second letter of Peter, chapter 1, verses 5 to 9. Virtue, understanding, and moderation are represented by the 3 jewels on the left-hand side of the emblem, which is on your right as you look at it, which in terms of the twin great pillars is Boaz, the pillar of strength. And patience, goodness, and kindness are represented by the 3 jewels on the right-hand side of the emblem, on the left as you look at it, which in terms of the twin great pillars is Jachin, the pillar of wisdom. And charity, the greatest of all, which is love in action, corresponds to the crown jewel, which crowns the largely hidden middle pillar. And the 8th pyramidal jewel at the base of the middle pillar signifies the pyramid of initiation, or pyramid of philosophy and science, wherein experiments are carried out to discover the laws of life, which are basically the laws of love and harmony. I hope you take this on board. The degrees of initiation are actually all experiments, scientific experiments. Now, these experiments constitute the degrees of initiation by means of which we can discover and know from practical experience what love really is. And to do this, we have to learn and practice virtue, understanding, moderation, patience, goodness, kindness, and charity. Most human beings, including me, find all of that very difficult to do all the time, but that's what we're meant to try to do. Now, the round jewels signify the knowledge acquired of these fundamental aspects of faith, wherein faith is a term for the holy wisdom, the wisdom of love. And the crown jewel is the full knowledge of divine love, which is love in action. And to give a Bible quote, it's the work that God works from the beginning to the end, which is written in the Bible in Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 11. And it's something that Francis Bacon pointed out, carefully pointed out, in fact, in his treatise on principles and origins according to the fables of Cupid and Coelum. This crown jewel equates with the missing capstone of the Great Pyramid, because the capstone has been raised up to become the crown jewel of all creation, the crown jewel that is otherwise known as the third eye, or the all-seeing eye, or the eye of providence, as depicted on the back of the Great Seal of the United States of America and displayed on the American dollar bill. And the square pyramidal jewel in the base of this emblem corresponds to Sephira number 10 on the Tree of Life, whilst the crown jewel corresponds to Sephira number 1. Now, Sephira number 10 is known as the bride, and Sephira number 1 is known as the groom. The bride is the soul, the groom is the spirit. When the bride is raised up and married to the groom, they become one in love. Now, these two, the bride and groom, are also represented by the face of bride on the lower part of the rectangular frame and by the face of Pan on the higher part. And Pan is the universal spirit of love who loves his bride. And bride is the illumined soul or mind who loves Pan. And in loving Pan, knows Pan, and therefore knows what love is. And their marriage of love, wherein each loves the other, is a delight, a joy, an ecstasy, which produces light, the light of love, which is their child of light. And there are also two 5-petaled roses, one on each side of the display of plants and fruit. They're each positioned in the center of a cross, wherein the main large cross is subdivided into two smaller crosses which act as twins. Right, left, male, female, wisdom, strength, etc. That's what these two represent. And that's a picture showing the hidden cross. One of the horizontal arms of each smaller cross is the concealed part of an arm of an arm of the large cross, whilst the other horizontal arm of each smaller cross is the visible part of the arm of the large cross. The vertical axis of each smaller cross is a vertical side of the rectangle. This graphic image, therefore, provides two rose crosses, symbolizing the twin Rosicrucians known as the heavenly twins, as described in the Gemini myth. Their horizontal arms touch and connect with each other, just like holding hands. The rose is symbolic of beauty, the beauty of the human soul, which blossoms on the cross of wisdom, the cross of faith. That's what the Rosicrucian cross really means. Now, this duality is also represented by Pan and Bride, the immortal Pan or spirit, and the mortal bride or soul. And in this instance, they connect with each other vertically. And when united in marriage, they become the immortal mortals. And this is what this endpiece emblem represents, the mystical marriage of spirit and soul, and how to attain it. Now, a pan-echoed tailpiece can also be found printed in the Shakespeare First Folio at the end of 25 of the 36 plays. These tailpieces can be found 7 times in the comedies, 9 times in the histories, and 9 times in the tragedies, including the very last page of the folio, which is the last page of the tragedy of Cymbeline. And the same tailpiece, in case you didn't know, the same tailpiece appeared 14 years earlier in the 1609 publication of Spenser's Faerie Queene. And even earlier, a similar tailpiece was printed in Plinius's Histoire du Monde, History of the World, of 1583, and in Vaginaire's Philostrate, or Philostratus, of 1578, the only difference being in what is shown in the oval shield covering the body of Pan, which I'm pointing to now. That's the only difference. Now let us look now at the very last page of Cryptomenytices et Cryptographiae and see what we can find there. This last page is unnumbered and follows the last numbered page, page 493, that ends the last book, book 9 of Cryptomenytices. And the last page of Cryptomenytices is also the last page of the 10-page headpiece series. Now, as the 10-page headpiece series cryptically corresponds to the 10 Sephiroth of the Tree of Life, it means that the last page corresponds to Sephira number 10, the bride or kingdom. And that this is so is confirmed in other ways also. And these other ways are rather important. Now, directly beneath the Bride Gemini Eagle headpiece is the name Lunae Burgi, printed in capital letters like a title. So, what does this name mean? And why is it printed in capital letters and placed beneath the headpiece like a title? And why is it associated with Sephira number 10 of the Tree of Life, which is the kingdom or the bride or Holy Grail? Well, one answer is that Lunae Burgi refers to Lunaburg, the city of the moon, where Cryptomenytices et Cryptographiae where the folio was printed. Its great folio manual. But more exactly, the word as printed means the fortified towns of the moon. The fortified towns of the moon. And esoterically, this cryptically refers to the colleges of the Rosicrucians, who are known as moon men. And this occult symbolism was referred to by Ben Jonson in his masque, News from the New World Discovered in the Moon, that was presented at court before King James I of England in Whitehall Palace on January the 6th and February the 11th, 1621. And in this masque, Jonson refers to the moon men being brethren of the Rosy Cross, and one in particular who is a poet sending news from the moon via two heralds to a printer, chronicler, and factor on earth. And in the conversation that takes place between them, the second herald explains that the language used by the Rosy Cross moon men is by signs and gestures, and certain motions to music, as all the discourse there is harmony. All the discourse in the moon is harmony. And the first herald goes on to explain that the brethren of the Rosy Cross have their college within a mile of the moon, a castle in the air that runs upon wheels with a winged lanthorn. Now, there are good reasons why this cryptic symbolism is used. As the moon is representative of the mind, and of Cabala, which means the received wisdom. The wisdom received by the mind, reflected upon, and then shared as reflected light, which is the understanding and knowledge of that wisdom. And for this reason, the moon is traditionally used Kabbalistically as a symbol of divine intelligence and of the Freemasonic pillar of strength called Boaz. And the moon men or Rosicrucians were Christian Kabbalists, as well as Freemasons who had been exalted into the higher degrees of the Holy Royal Arch and above. And the moon men or Rosicrucians were known as the Invisibles. And this is because the Rosicrucian consciousness is an illuming consciousness that exists on the higher levels of the mind, which those who are not illumined cannot see. Because when you have an illuming consciousness, it opens the third eye. The primary Rosicrucian college in those days was the so-called Invisible College in England, which was led by Sir Francis Bacon, its founder or instaurator. And Duke Augustus was in correspondence with Francis Bacon. And it was from him and the Invisible College in England that payments were made for the engraved pictures in Duke Augustus's Cryptomenytices and Cryptographiae, as I mentioned in my second talk in this series, Cryptomenytices and Cryptographiae, Intelligences and Cryptology generally. The Invisible College was also known as the Philosophical College or Society. Robert Boyle, writing in 1646, referred to this with the words, "The best on it is that the cornerstones of the invisible, or as they term themselves, the Philosophical College." And various notes in Evelyn's diary show that this Invisible College or Philosophical Society met first in London, next at Oxford, and then intermittently in London and Oxford during the civil wars, which were from 1642 to 1651. And the Oxford meetings, led by Dr. John Wilkins, were held either in taverns or in Wadham College, of which Dr. John Wilkins became the head in 1648, with the society referred to then as the Society of the Virtuosi. And for large meetings, the society met in the parlour of Gresham College in London, which had been posthumously founded in 1597 to promote the new learning according to the will of Sir Thomas Gresham, an English merchant, financier, agent of the English Crown at Antwerp, and founder of the Royal Exchange. Now, Gresham College didn't take students as such and awarded no degree, but instead offered lectures free and open to the general public. And Sir Thomas Gresham, a close friend of Sir Nicholas Bacon, Lord Keeper of the Great Seal, had been married to Anne Ferneley, the sister of Jane Ferneley, who was Sir Nicholas Bacon's first wife. And Gresham's illegitimate daughter Anne married Sir Nathaniel Bacon, the second son of Sir Nicholas Bacon and Jane Ferneley, and half-brother of Anthony and Francis Bacon. And like the Lord Keeper Sir Nicholas Bacon, Sir Thomas Gresham was a member of the International Family of Love, as they were called. And Gresham was appointed in 1567 as the first Grand Master of the newly created London Grand Lodge, the southern branch of English operative Freemasonry, a position he held until 1579 when he died. This London Grand Lodge had a speculative core known as the Exception, to which Gresham belonged, and many of its members were also members of the Society of the Golden and Rosy Cross. And Sir Thomas Gresham became a patron of Francis Bacon and of Bacon's project of New Learning, which meant that Gresham College became one of the main places where the new learning was promoted and developed. Now, the Invisible College or Philosophical Society inspired the foundation of many such societies throughout Europe, and in England it inspired what was to become the Royal Society in King Charles II's time. Just before that happened, in 1636, King Charles I granted a license under Privy Seal to found an academy or college called Minerva's Museum. Minerva is a Roman name for Pallas Athena. Minerva's Museum, which would instruct young noblemen in the liberal arts and sciences. It lasted until 1642, when the outbreak of civil war closed the academy. Then after the war, which concluded around 1652, remnants of the Philosophical Society and other Rosicrucian-minded intellectuals gathered together to form a chartered organization. And as a result of its first meeting on the 28th of November 1660, and a lecture by Christopher Wren, the Society of 12 men, referred to as Fellows, decided to concern itself with natural philosophy and to establish a college for the promoting of physico-mathematical experimental learning at Gresham College, London. That's quite a mouthful. A college for the promoting of physico-mathematical experimental learning. And 2 years later, in 1662, the society received its royal charter from King Charles II with an official name of the Royal Society of London for Improving Natural Knowledge. A few years later, the Reverend Dr. Thomas Spratt, who was later to become Bishop of Rochester, was specially commissioned by the Royal Society to write its history under the supervision of Dr. John Wilkins, one of the Society's founding members. And when the history of the Royal Society of London for the Improving of Natural Knowledge by the Reverend Dr. Thomas Sprat was published in London in 1667, it acknowledged Francis Bacon as its instaurator. And in the book, Dr. Sprat states, "I shall only mention one great man who had the true imagination of the whole extent of this enterprise as it is now set on foot, and that is the Lord Bacon." And Dr. Sprat mentions Wadham College in Oxford, where the Philosophical Society used to meet under the direction of the college's sixth warden, Dr. John Wilkins, as the birthplace of what would later become the Royal Society. And the frontispiece to Thomas Sprat's History of the Royal Society, designed by John Evelyn and engraved by Holler, shows a bust of Charles II, the Society's founding royal patron, about to be crowned with laurels by a figure representing the goddess Fame. To the right of the column, supporting the bust of Charles II, which is your left as you look at the picture, is portrayed Viscount Bruckner, the first president of the Royal Society, who points with the forefinger of his right hand to a Latin inscription on the column, which reads, translated into English, "Charles II, author and patron of the Royal Society." And to the left of the column, which is your right as you look at the picture, is portrayed Francis Bacon, Viscount St. Alban, as Lord Chancellor and Keeper of the Great Seal of England, who holds in his right hand the purse containing the royal seal. Now note some extra things about this. His right arm appears curved, whilst his left arm is held out to his left, forming a square, with his forefinger pointing towards the margin of the picture, with which it forms a 30-degree angle. In this way, Bacon is denoting with his arms the compass and square of Freemasonry, whilst also suggesting the geometry of Solomon's seal and the six-pointed blazing star of illumination. And on the squared black and white marble floor, in front of Bacon's feet, are the words Artium Instaurator, meaning instaurator of the arts. And the word instaurator means the founder and renovator. And the arts include philosophy, which is a theoretical understanding of the arts, and science, which is an empirical knowledge of them. It means you put something into action artistically. Now, going back to the last page of Cryptomenytices. On this last page of Cryptomenytices, beneath the Lunibergi title, is a pictorial emblem displaying a lion climbing up a steep and rocky mountainside with a cluster of stars in the sky above. There's the lion, there's the rocky hillside, and there are the stars. And the Latin motto surrounding the oval picture in Latin is per aspera ad astra, which means in English, through difficulties to the stars, which describes what the picture represents. The lion indicates the strength and courage required to climb the mountain of difficulties, this being the strength and courage of the heart, as the zodiac sign of Leo, the lion, rules the heart. Now, beneath the emblem on this page is a 3-line, 12-word sentence. The sentence is mostly in Latin, except for 2 words in German. And this sentence translates as written with the type and expenses of the brothers John and Henry, Bibliopoles of Lüneburg. But before Bibliopoles is inserted the German 2 words, which means of the stars. So as the emblem is written out in this way, it means in English, written with the type and expenses of the brothers John and Henry of the stars, Bibliopoles of Lüneburg, and is followed on the next 2 lines with the Euro publication 1624 in Latin numerals. Now the 2 German words "des Sternum," meaning of the stars, are notable because A, they are an addition to the Latin sentence, which reads perfectly well without them. B, they are in German rather than Latin. And C, they're typeset in a Gothic font instead of the Roman font or the Latin sentence. All of which makes the 2 words "der Sternum" stand out prominently, clearly for a reason. So there's 2 words, 2 printers, the 2 again. Now this whole motto should send, and these words should send the alert reader back to the per aspera ad astra emblem through difficulties to the stars, where the stars, if you look at them, they're not only mentioned in the inscription, but they're also to be seen in the emblem picture. If one looks very carefully, it is possible to see a cluster of 7 stars. Can you see 7 stars? Pointing to them now. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now, a cluster of 7 stars usually refers to the Pleiades, which means the 7 sisters, who appear in the sky on the neck of Taurus the bull. So this is Taurus. There's the figure of Taurus drawn. And there's the Pleiades on the neck of the bull. Now the Pleiades are symbolic of Sephira number 3, the divine intelligence on the Kabbalistic tree of life. So that's the usual symbol for number 3. Now in Christianity, the divine intelligence is known as the Holy Spirit or Holy Breath that bears the word of God and breathes that word into the hearts of human souls, thereby inspiring us with love and wisdom, and indeed life. What is not so well known is that the Pleiades are also symbolic of the British Isles, known traditionally as the Blessed Isles. And the classical myth associated with this is that of Atlas, who rescued his daughters, the Pleiades, from the flood by raising them on his mighty neck. And in the sky, Atlas is represented by the constellation of Taurus the bull. And on Earth, Atlas the bull is represented by mainland Europe. Just want you to be able to take that in for a moment. Another classical myth describing all this allegorically is that of Europa and the bull, from which Europe gets its name. Now, because both the moon and the Pleiades are used to symbolize the holy intelligence, the allusion to the city of the moon at the very end of Cryptomenytices et Cryptographiae links the moon with the Pleiades. At the same time, it links the moon men, the Rosicrucians, to the British Isles, or Blessed Isles, the three lands of England, Scotland, and Ireland. So it is interesting that the Pleiades are not only known as the Seven Sisters, but also as the Three Sisters. And these three form what are known as the Triple Goddess. And the Pleiades, daughters of Atlas, are also known as the Hesperides. Hence the British Isles are known anciently as the islands of the Hesperides, in which the apple orchards grow. And in these orchards can be found Merlin munching the golden apples very happily. Whilst the Hesperides, symbolic of the Holy Spirit or Holy Breath, softly blow as breezes through the trees, inspiring Merlin with wisdom. And golden apples are symbolic of knowledge of wisdom, with the apple tree representing the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And all this is cryptically pointed to on this last page of Cryptomenytices et Cryptographiae, which twins the title page, wherein Duke Augustus is removing the mitre to reveal Francis Bacon as the second Trithemius and president of the Rosicrucian Society, who sends messages across land and water to the moon men of Europe. So I'll end my screen share there, and I'll end my talk there as well. So thank you for listening to this. I hope you're able to think about that and take at least some of it in. Okay, thank you.